Time for sound design. Today I'm back with a video where I will actually focus only on sound design. And I'm gonna show you how I created this pattern. So as you can hear, this very aggressive sounding saturated pattern is basically created from one kick drum sample. Let's go to Ableton and I'll show you how I created this. Here in Ableton I have the original sample that I used for this. So it's a very subby low kick drum. You might want to use good speakers if you want to hear this properly, or good headphones. So this is just a kick sample that comes standard with Ableton. It's kind of an 808 style with a very long tail. And what I did to create the pattern that I already played you is I loaded this sample into Simpler. And I basically, the only thing I did is that I tuned it to a C. So the sample is actually a G sharp. This is the original pitch, so it's also a bit off, so the detune is at +17. And now when I play a C on my keyboard, you hear a perfect C. I changed the release time to 500 milliseconds and I used the filter. So this is how it normally sounds, and then with the filter envelope engaged, it sounds like this. So very small difference. I didn't use any of the loop modes or stuff like that, and no modulation. So that's just the basic sample in Sampler. You might want to ask, like, why did I load it into Sampler? And that's basically so I can play it in different pitches. So if you can, so as you hear in the pattern that I played you, is that you have this very low sound, but there's also much higher sounds in this in the pattern. So that's why I used Sampler. So if I now play you the pattern without any of the effects, it sounds like this. It's a 2-bar loop, and if you look at the notes that are actually being played, if I unfold it, so the lowest one is an F2, then it goes to C3, C4, G3, and then for the second bar is F, C, F, C. Oh yeah, and there's an F5 as well, so that's the very high one. So this is a nice little rhythmic pattern, but it's also a little bit boring and lifeless, and that's where the effects come in. And let me start with some distortion, some overdrive. I made it mono with the utility, but that's just because of the low end. And then there is a pedal. It's on overdrive, gain 12% and dry wet at 58. So this is just to bring out some overtones of the otherwise quite siny sample. The next effect is a delay, and it's a very short delay time. Feedback only at 30. There's some offset for the right channel, and I filtered the output so only you hear the high frequencies. And that's basically not to muddy up the low end. I don't want to have a very low kick with a lot of delay on it. So the delay is very subtle, but then where the real kind of aggression comes from is the roar effect. And I've made a video about the roar effect before. I also used it on drums, and it's a great effect to bring out a lot of saturation and overdrive and harmonics out of a sample. There are many different kinds of profiles in the roar effect, so you can go from very subtle to very extreme. I will link that video in the description of this video as well. Okay, so back to the roar effect. What I did here is I used a little bit of drive. I only used stage 1. I used 30%, and the main thing is that I used the bit crush shaper. So there are different shapers here, and the bit crush gives that kind of aggressive effect. I didn't use the filter. I used a little bit of amount of feedback, 25%, so that's not too much. And for the rest, I kept all the settings the same, I think. So that sounds like this. So this effect really transforms the pattern from something that has some overdrive and has some overdrive to something very aggressive, and that's basically the bit crush and also the sort of the tail of the bit crush. However, I think this is a bit too much and it's a bit too static. So what I did is that I added a LFO to change the amount of stage 1. So it goes between 0 to 42%. So it goes up to, I think, 30% here. And I use it on random and the rate is half a bar. And if you do that, then sometimes you have the aggression and sometimes it's more dialed down. So in this way, you kind of control the aggression, and sometimes you have more of it, sometimes less. You create also more variation. So if you listen to this loop for a longer time, it's not exactly the same. There's more variation. So yeah, that's basically the kind of key to this sound, is to use the roar effect on bit crush, but then shape the amount of bit crush effect with an LFO. So as you can see, that's all there is to this sound. Let me play it once more. I can listen to this loop on over and over again because it has enough interest with the LFO that it's not too static. It has the little high note and the low, so it's a perfect balance between different frequencies. Let me know in the comments how you use the roar effect in Ableton, on what kind of material have you tried it out, what are some of the shapers that you think are interesting. As always, keep making music. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.